good to see you all. Welcome to the green phase, by the way. I know that we're in it as of last Friday if you're in Allegheny County. I wanted to just thank Representative Gainey as well as Councilperson Liv Bennett for their thoughts and their comments today. In getting into health news, the American Public Health Association describes racism as a public health crisis. I'd like to bookend my particular section for public policy with this topic, and we'll come back to this in slide 3. On the right side, in economic news, it was a surprise to a couple of folks to see that the U.S. economy actually added 2.5 million jobs in May. This is up from the 20 million jobs lost in April. If you put it into perspective, around 1 in 4 Americans applied for unemployment during this time. And while the unemployment rate from April of 14.7 has fallen to 13.3, we're seeing that that this number for white Americans is around 7% lower, and around 26% higher for Black Americans as it relates to unemployment. So let's keep that in perspective as well. Beyond that, the Congressional Budget Office has mentioned and said that through their analysis, the pandemic will cost around $8 trillion to the US economy by 2030. In terms of policy news, the Main Street Lending Program is something that is going live this week. This was something that was already passed in the CARES Act several weeks ago, but this is the first availability of the $500 billion that's going to banks in local regions. So this is to shore up the drawdown of PPP funding as well. As mentioned in the previous presentation that I gave last week, the next coronavirus bill will likely be scheduled before July 4th, though Senator McConnell is taking a careful look at this fourth and final bill is what he's been quoted as saying. So this would be the last piece of major federal legislation before the November election outside of an omnibus bill. The Democrats are still pushing for this $3 trillion House bill, which includes major entitlement reforms, many of which were talked about on this call already, as well as extending federal unemployment benefits of $600 per week into the end of December of this year. Republicans are considering a more pared down version, which includes payroll tax cuts, additional stimulus checks, back to work bonuses per week of around $450, and then encouragement for state governments to continue to reopen. On the next slide, with regard to Pennsylvania, we're seeing a decrease in the new number of cases, as well as an increase in the percentage of recoveries and testing available, which is shown in the slides below. Elementary and secondary schools in locations that are yellow or green phased counties in Pennsylvania can resume in-class teaching on July 1st, so keep an eye out for that. There are now no counties that are listed as red, by the way, although those things are subject to change. Elder care restrictions do remain in place for certain areas. And then here in Allegheny County, contact tracing has begun in Southwest Pennsylvania, so just keep an eye out for that. Economic news, 1.9 million Pennsylvanians applied for unemployment last week. This is down from the March highs of 6 million filings. Restaurants can open at half capacity. Nail, hair salons, and gyms can now reopen in ways that are in line with the government's restrictions. Beyond that, mail-in ballots are still being received and counted if they're postmarked by June 2nd of last week. And then just mentioning here that a slate of progressive women candidates won their primaries in Pennsylvania, and this might have policy implications for us going into November. On the third slide, and I promised that I would get back to this, I wanted to bring a close to the public policy discussion with some racial justice updates. National Democrats are drafting policy changes to policing, including banning chokeholds, limiting qualified immunity for police, creating a national misconduct registry, and ending no-knock warrants for drug cases. These were different areas that were explicitly part of some of the recent police killings in local communities around the country. The defund the police movement is also something that's gained further credence. Minneapolis announced that they unanimously supported a defund the police posture in terms of basically restructuring the way that they approach public safety. And so, I think we will have broader conversations about this moving forward. I think it's an important conversation. But there have always been alternative systems to safety beyond just police training. So training in body cameras is one piece of that equation, but certainly many see it as insufficient to the ongoing threats of police brutality and what's been taking place in this country, even after a lot of those reforms took on. Beyond that, sorry, I'm just reading through some of my notes here. I think Councilwoman Bennett, as well as Representative Gainey, mentioned the need for more funding as it relates to mental health, domestic violence, and homelessness. All of these areas are areas where the police are the first responders, and it might not need to be the case that they need to be first responders for mental health, for domestic violence, for homelessness, that there could be social services that are in place there. And so the defund the police movement, really, for its supporters, it's not clear yet if it means to take down the entire policing system or if it's to reallocate certain funds. So I think keep your ears open for more news about that in the coming weeks, and I'll certainly bring more of that discussion forward as well as we move forward. Beyond that, Governor Wolf has mentioned numerous actions to improve law enforcement in the Commonwealth, and Allegheny County leaders have introduced bans on tear gas and rubber bullets, if that wasn't already mentioned. Pittsburgh Police, we're closely following the events of last Monday in East Liberty, that as it relates to the peaceful protests that were here in East Liberty, followed by police action that took place therein. So we're into now our 9th straight day of Pittsburgh protests, including downtown East Liberty and yesterday in Mount Washington. And I included this final picture here just to show that the White House is at the very end of this street here, but DC Mayor Muriel Bowser had Black Lives Matter painted on the road where the police forcibly cleared protests for his photo op for the president. So finally, I just wanted to end with this call to action, as the Forbes Funds is want to do. As we covered in this presentation, African Americans are being disproportionately impacted in at least 3 different existential ways in this current moment: policing injustices nationwide, coronavirus, and economic instability. If I could provide all of us non-Black Pennsylvanians with a call to action, it would be this: that we would be those who would donate, advocate, and educate. And I hope that we can be better allies going forward. I certainly want to be a better ally going forward as well. And I think it requires us to think long and hard about where we stand within the current systems and structures that pervade some of the largest problems as it relates for African American people in our communities. So with that, I'll close my comments. Thank you.